Hi, I'm Ronan Kennedy, and I'm joined today with Suzanne Browne, who's very kindly uh, joined us to share some insights about her career journey so far and tell us what she's doing now. Suzanne, thanks so much for joining and taking some time out of your busy schedule.
Thanks so much for having me, Ronan. It's lovely to be here
Yeah,
and see a friendly face. It's been a couple of years since we've
yeah.
had a proper chat and a proper catch up.
Since we first touched base, and even then, I think when we started talking, I was like very struck by the diversity and all the different angles to your career. So that's why I thought it'd be really great to share that story. So could you maybe kick off and tell us about your career journey so far?
Career journey so far. How far do you want me to go back? I started because I don't know about a lot of your audience, but I started back when I actually started in my teens.
Mm,
Would you believe it? Started working when I was 14.
right.
Part-time work while I was still in school. Absolutely loved work.
Mm,
Just loved getting paid for something that I felt like I was doing well, loved the recognition of it,
yeah.
and was motivated to kind of push on and do a bit more. So yeah, I've kind of been in and out of a couple of jobs from early on in my teenage years right into my early 20s, everything from retail to kind of
Mm.
cleaning to
So you've always
administration.
been working, right?
Always, always been working, Roland. I just loved the purpose. I loved being able. I
Mm,
felt like I did it well.
mm,
You know what I mean? I felt like when I was in work, I did. I felt a sense of achievement.
mm, mm,
I didn't really feel that so much when I was in school.
right.
So work for me was great. There was always jobs now that I enjoyed more than others.
Mm,
Um, but I love the sense of purpose, and I
mm,
love the opportunity that was within a job, and I love being able to, I suppose, be with like-minded people
mm.
as well. There's always the social element of it too.
So you found it like, did you find it good for like staying stimulated, staying like engaged or engaging your mind or building confidence or?
It was confidence, I would say, and a sense of self-worth.
Mm,
School was a bit of a skill was skill.
mm,
It didn't come naturally. I worked very hard, but I didn't feel like I got the reward in the result for the efforts that I put in. Whereas when I went to work and I showed up and I did my best, you got the good shifts,
mm,
you got the recognition, you might have got a bit of responsibility. Um, and then opportunities came through that. I remember my dad would have been very much of the ethos, hard work
mm,
always pays off. So that was kind of instilled in us from a very young age. And I really believed it because I felt it, I experienced it.
mm, mm.
So yeah, so having a hard work ethic has definitely been something that I've always embraced.
Yeah, super. So a good place to build confidence, meet people, increase your skills.
Yeah.
And definitely if you, it's interesting, like maybe you felt you didn't get it as much at school, but then going to work maybe suited you better. And then you brought that forward. So did you find the retail was a good building block for going more into business or?
Yeah, retail is tough, and it's a tough industry, and I feel it's something that kind of everybody should experience in some way because we're all consumers, and I suppose it's a good reminder, particularly when you are the consumer in that environment, that you have that perspective of the other person on the other side, who generally is starting out in their own career or trying to support themselves in some way. So I would have encouraged even my own kids at this stage,
Mm,
you have to do some sort of work with the public in
mm,
retail or hospitality or something because it gives you a set of skills that can only help you really,
mm,
everything from problem solving to developing your social skills to yeah, just even showing up, showing a bit of your
mm.
personality. All of those skills, I think, are really good skills to carry, throughout every asset of your career.
Yeah.
So,
So good for relationship building and managing conflict, all those things you have to learn in retail, right?
oh yes, the
Right.
joys are in retail.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So you go from being a consumer as you grow up to being on the other side, and you realize actually I'm the one who has to, right? Because I worked in hospitality myself, and then it was
yeah,
an abrupt shift where you realize, oh, I'm the one who has to uh, go with the orders here, and I have to solve this person's problem as best I can.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It's a good learning curve. I recommend anybody that wants to develop kind of baseline skills for your career, do something with the public,
mm,
whether that's hospitality or, something in the service industry is you'll build those skills and they'll stay with you forever.
fantastic. So what did you do then after that? After you moved out of retail, what came next?
After retail, I moved to the Midlands, out of Dublin and into the Midlands, and from there I started kind of in more administrative roles and spent a couple of years working my way up and getting a broad sense of how business kind of operates. Um, and it's interesting because I was very curious. I was kind of always looking to kind of understand how other elements of a business interact and
Mm,
how, I didn't like the silo approach of understanding business. And when I look back now, business in particular was a topic or a subject that I had in school that I absolutely loved.
mm,
It was one of the classes that I was switched on in. I used to love understanding how a business works and how every element kind of has to work together in some way for the operation or the business to be successful. So I kind of explored that in different companies that I worked for, and I would have been a very loyal employee. So I would have stayed for kind of a long period of time in a couple of my earlier roles
mm,
and worked in different elements of the business to get a real sense of it. I loved problem solving. I
mm,
loved trying to make things better. I loved being able to see an area that needed some improvement and try and find a way to kind of make it work a
mm.
little bit better. So I was definitely uh, that kept my interest.
Yeah.
Kept my
I'm
interest.
interested in your love of problem solving. Most people see problems as problems, right? As things they
Yeah,
want
they
to
do. Yeah.
avoid. But for you, it sounds like an exciting challenge.
I'm a fixer, yeah, I love fixing, like, I don't like physically fixing things, that's not my role, that's my husband's. But I love to, yeah, I like understanding why,
Mm,
root cause stuff.
mm,
I don't like accepting, well, that's the way we do things because that's the way we do things, or we've
mm,
always done it that way. Um and I don't really like that type of response when something is not working well. It's
mm,
different if something's running well, yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If
mm,
something's working well, great. That's great. But if something's not working well, what's going on here? Why isn't it working
mm,
well? Doing that deep dive and trying to get back to the
mm.
reason why, and then seeing how you can make a change or how you can make it better in some way, you
Yeah.
know?
I'm interested listening to you. You talk a lot about the process of problem solving or working with
Mm,
people. A lot of people, I think, when they're starting their career or they're trying to find a new job, they're very fixated on a topic like sport or health and fitness or food or technology or whatever it is. But you seem to come at it from the other angle of, I want to fix problems. I want to make things better. Maybe I want to improve or innovate or work with good people. So it's a slightly different approach. Did you find that was like a very organic, process, or did you always know that that was
no, it's just the way my brain works.
Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't it's funny, like, yeah, it's something I've learned about myself, but
Mm,
I suppose it was kind of, it was quite natural. It was quite a natural thing.
mm,
It wasn't anything that I had to think about too much.
yeah,
Um, but I found it kind of engaged me a little bit more, and I loved the idea of a project where you got to do something and there was an end,
mm,
and there was a result of
mm,
some sort.
yeah,
That's the type of work that I liked. The day-to-day stuff, I kind of
mm,
got bored very easily. I like being challenged. I like doing new things.
mm.
So, and there's always problems, isn't there, to solve? So that type of stuff was.
That was keeping you engaged and keeping you interested, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell us, how did you employ those sort of skills? Your problem solving, your engagement. How did you employ those in companies?
But so I think the first role that really allowed me to do that, um, in a really lovely environment was with Food Cloud.
Mm,
So, as you know, I was with Food Cloud from the early days. And yeah, I went in there as their COO of the hub operation, which was, the storage warehouse environment, the practical kind of element of the operation. And we were doing everything on a shoestring. I mean, everything. We were trying to be really creative and innovative with very little.
mm,
And we had a couple of really passionate people around us who were either volunteering or giving us some support. And I suppose I really enjoyed that collective effort to make something out of, well, we had very little, in the beginning. And so I enjoyed that we all had, I suppose, the same goal and ambition to make this work. We were all very passionate,
mm,
and we had, I suppose, the freedom to be able to learn as we went and trial different things, what worked, maybe what didn't work.
mm,
Um, and if it didn't work, we'd try something else.
mm.
So there was a bit of freedom. There was a sense of
Autonomy or
e- autonomy, yeah, but we weren't. It was a lovely learning
mm,
environment. That we were all kind of near enough around the same level in terms of age and education and that sort of thing. But we were very much all in a role that had some responsibility, but we were working together
mm,
to solve a problem. And that team effort was very strong.
mm,
The culture was just, it was fabulous. It was
mm.
a lovely experience in every
A
sense. So
real
that
mission-driven culture, I imagine.
Oh, yeah, it was fabulous, and there was a part of my role which was, bringing people on. We volunteers, as I said, we people coming in from social welfare schemes or community schemes, and I loved working with people that, um, may or may not, let's say, have had to be there for whatever reason, and just finding out what they were looking to get from the experience, and maybe try and inspire them a little bit or
Mm,
motivate them a little bit or light a fire in them, in
mm,
some of them, that they didn't even realize they had themselves. And help them in any way that we could, so that we were, I suppose, um, building building Food Cloud, but at the same time we were developing people.
wow.
And that was such a lovely experience.
Fan
And it wasn't anything that I expected when I went in there, but it was a part of the role that really I remember very fondly. I
mm.
remember very, very fondly.
So you're kind of you're helping the end user on the outside through the service of Food Cloud, but then you're also like coaching, mentoring, giving leadership to people inside. So it's really
Yeah,
working
and
on
it's
both
but
sides.
and I didn't know that's what it was at the time, Ronan.
Yeah.
It just felt like I felt like I could, it was a part of the role that I really enjoyed. It was a part of the role that I got a lot of satisfaction out of, and it was a part of the role that felt very natural to me. Um, and we were based in Tala primarily, which is where I'm from, and
Mm.
so a huge part of me felt like I was at home again,
Right, right,
because
right.
I'd been living in the Midland for so long. And we were in Galway and Cork as well. But yeah, it was just a lovely sense of um giving something extra, being able to be something more than just
Mm,
you're in your role, you're getting paid for a job, there
right.
was,
Like contributing beyond yourself.
yeah. And it was the first time that really kind of lit up
Mm.
in me at that point. I was like, yeah, no, this there's something in
This
this,
is the good stuff.
Yeah, this is the good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think a lot of people would aspire to roles where they can contribute, or maybe they've got caught tired of one type of job or corporate life, or different things, and they'll say, you know what, I want to give back. They would come to me and say, I want to do something where I can give back, where I can make a difference, where I can contribute. These types of phrases. So going in there, I think that type of organization is very interesting, but they might struggle to think, I don't know what I would do, like. I'm not an expert in food. I'm not an expert in technology. I'm not an expert in sustainability or whatever it might be. Like, what would you say to those type of people? Do you think there are roles for them if they've come from another background and they can go in and use transferable skills in a type of business like food or a type of charity like Food Cloud? Or what would you say?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for me, what helped me, I suppose, discover that that's something that I really enjoyed was doing that whole piece around your values.
Mm,
What is it that you actually value the most? Um, and what was interesting for me, I suppose, was I realized that helping people was t- was more important for me than helping a business.
mm.
So, and that's kind of what inspired me to go on and do my own start my own coaching business. Even though when I started my own business a couple of years ago, it very much was still helping businesses.
Mm,
But when I did a bit of thinking about it, I thought, no, it's actually the helping the people, helping individuals was what really motivated me. So I'd say for anybody that wanted to have, I suppose, a little bit more satisfaction or fulfillment in whatever it is that they're looking to do, I think it's important to connect back to your values and try and understand, number one, what they are,
mm,
and number two, how you can start to probably implement them in some way or design a life for yourself where you're meeting those values somehow. And I think within anyone's role, there is an opportunity to do
mm,
more than what's been asked of you. It's, I think, having the do the work, see what it is you can actually do within your organization that feels natural and maybe can satisfy one of your values
mm.
in some way.
Would you say it's fair that that's kind of been a theme throughout your career, whereas you've had your job, but then you've almost had an additional side job internally, which is helping other people or coaching them or mentoring them. It's almost like you've had. It seems to me like you've had two careers simultaneously, kind of.
Yeah, but like when you say it like that, it sounds like I was aware of it. I really wasn't.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It wasn't like there's this big master plan on your wall. You were just doing
No.
what came naturally.
Yeah, no, and Ronan, like, I mean, I got coaching from you years ago. I got coaching from a couple of other different individuals earlier on in my career. And, it took me to do
Mm,
some coaching with somebody else to be able to articulate or
mm,
understand myself a little bit better. I've mentioned to you before, I have ADHD, which is something I realized only recently. So my brain doesn't necessarily process information in a conventional way. It's different, yeah. Um, so having that space to kind of get what's out here to a sounding board to somebody that will actually allow you to express yourself in a way that makes sense to you
mm.
and try and articulate it or even summarize it and say it back to you in a way that, oh, yeah, that's what that is. I've had to do that a couple of times over the years. So I place a huge, um, I place a huge credit to, I suppose, where I am today, purely based on my effort to develop myself with the help of a coach
Yeah.
at different points.
That's fantastic, but it's also like you being open to engaging with other people and trying to figure it out and trying to say, okay, something doesn't fit, or maybe there's something I could get assistance from. So there's a certain openness there, right, to figure out.
There is, but I suppose with me, it was always something doesn't make sense.
Mm,
Like I kind of from my teenage years onwards, I always felt like I was a little bit different in
mm,
how I seen things or process things, never really fully understanding why. Um and I suppose that curiosity to understand myself a little bit better has always been there. Um and the development I did was always in my career because that was the one thing that I was very, very much engaged in. So I did a huge amount of professional development in terms of courses, anything that was offered to me, I jumped on it because I always wanted to try and discover or try and find a better way
mm.
because I knew inside I was struggling a little bit with some of the basic stuff.
Like, what was the impact of your ADHD on your career? Or what is the impact of it?
What is the
Like,
impact of it?
is there positive and negative impacts, or how do you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah. So, like, now I understand some of the challenges that I had in my younger years, which was the lack of focus. So I have what's called combined type ADHD, which means that I'm both inattentive and hyperactive. And when people, yeah, well,
Good on you for doing a podcast.
yeah. So when people think of hyperactivity, you think of that stereotypical, 6-year-old boy running around a room or running around a classroom or whatever it was. So for me, it was, I was a very inattentive in school. I was the daydreamer. I was looking out the window. My mind was racing. My leg might have been twitching but I wasn't running around a room. Um, Girls present a little bit differently. And I suppose the challenge I had particularly in my earlier years, was the actual being organized. It wasn't even necessarily being in the classroom because I wasn't particularly focused anyway. So that was kind of all gone
Mm,
over my head. But getting to school,
mm,
getting the books into the bag, making sure I had the right books for the day,
mm,
making sure I had the calculator, the ruler, whatever it was that was needed, the PE gear, the lunch, getting the bus, making sure I wasn't late. All of that part of it
mm.
was the exhausting
So
part.
it's like all the boring stuff, all the routine, all the mundane stuff
Yeah,
was
I didn't
difficult
have
to.
yeah, I didn't have the organizational
Mm,
skills. It was difficult. It was exhausting. And when I got to school, if the subject, whatever it was, wasn't stimulating me or wasn't of interest, it just was not going in. And then I could go to a subject where I was all in and
mm,
I absolutely loved every element of it. So, so yeah, and then it was the same in work. There was
mm,
elements of work, particularly as I got into more senior roles, you tend to kind of have more paperwork or more
mm,
reporting or that sort of thing. Yet that side of it I
mm,
struggled with a little bit, the more mundane stuff.
mm,
Very important. But the thing with ADHD is if it doesn't interest you, doesn't matter how important it is,
mm.
it doesn't land, you know?
So that's really what I want to figure out. That's the extra hurdle, is maybe people who don't have ADHD can say, "Yeah, maybe this is boring, but I know I have to go through it." Where is that right? Whereas with ADHD, it's like that's a higher bar to get
Oh,
over.
it's so difficult.
Mm,
It's so difficult. Like I would be considered as very quite high functioning,
mm,
I've a happy family,
mm,
I've had a successful career, I can hold down a job.
mm,
So a lot of people with ADHD, it can be hard to get up in the morning and get yourself
mm,
into the shower
mm,
and so it affects people in different ways, but it still showed up in some of the more mundane tasks that I would have had responsibility for. I would have been, and I actually posted about this recently on LinkedIn, where it showed up for me was remembering people's names. remembering people's names, being introduced to somebody really important
Mm.
or being in a meeting or wherever it was. And I just could not for the like of me recall somebody's name. And I would be actively trying to remember. And then you're missing half of what's being said, which
Right.
is the whole reason why you're there. Um, or, yeah, or speaking out turn.
Mm. So is it because your mind is racing, maybe there's another dialogue going on internally along with the one that's going on
Exactly.
externally?
Correct. Yeah. Your mind is racing and all the time. You tend to speak before you think. You or you forget. Yes,
Mm.
so your short-term memory is not as strong.
Mm.
So if you're in a meeting and you have something important to say or you're waiting on your turn, you're literally trying to get it out because you're afraid you'll forget
Yeah, yeah.
what it is that you need to say.
But
Um
looking at your career so far, Suzanne, it doesn't show up. Like you don't look at your LinkedIn profile like I was doing before our chat today and think, oh, this person probably has ADHD, right? Because you've held
well,
high
so
roles, you've worked on massive projects, you've led teams, you've mentored businesses, you've got two businesses going simultaneously now. Well, maybe that maybe that is part of it, right? You want to have a lot of variety, but it doesn't strike you as someone who's distracted every 6 months and changes to a new job, right?
no, but I left a couple of jobs without having any plan.
Mm.
Quite impulsive.
Is
Um,
that a characteristic as well?
yeah,
Impulsivity?
y- but these are the great characters. Well, they were great for me
Mm.
because um, you're a little bit less fearless. You don't really think things through that you can talk yourself out of something. So you tend to just put yourself out there
Mm.
and go for it. And I mean, we all know that those that kind of push themselves or really put themselves out there, there are
That's it.
benefits to
Yeah.
that. Um, there's also some negatives, but there's quite a lot of benefits. So we do tend to be kind of go getters. Um,
Would you say decisiveness then is a characteristic?
very decisive, very very decisive. Yeah, very decisive. Yes and no. It's funny because I would say I am my emotional brain
Mm.
controls an awful lot of my decision making.
Mm.
So my ADHD is my executive function, which is the piece in the front, which is my organizing, my planning, my being focused, all that sort of stuff. That would be underactive.
Mm.
Whereas my emotional brain would be overactive. So as a child, I was probably a little bit more attention seeking or dramatic, or, you feel emotions very strongly. Um, so if something feels good or it doesn't feel good
Mm.
or what, I would be very decisive around that.
Mm.
And so sometimes it's hard to justify things because it's the feeling,
Mm. Mhm.
so you're
Mhm.
kind of led by intuition. Um, but then, like for me, it took me a while to realize that that's not a bad thing when you're trying to explore and do new things or you're you're career driven, because you tend to kind of just dust yourself off and
Mm.
go again,
Mhm.
which is how you have to be, isn't it? To have any real success. So
Do you think your intuition can also be like pattern recognition from
that's
experiencing things
exactly it.
before?
And your senses are heightened. So for me, I hate shopping centers. I hate noisy environments. Never really understood why, but it was because all of my senses were fired up the entire time. I would come home, I would be exhausted, wouldn't really understand why. I would be irritable, I'd be short tempered. I wouldn't enjoy that type of experience. Never really fully understanding why. But that's what it is. All your senses are heightened. So, you're kind of seeing everything that's going on. It's hard to focus in on a conversation.
Yeah.
Noises, too warm, too hot, or too cold, all of that sort of thing. And it's not that it anyone can feel hot or cold, yes. So, but it's extreme. You really feel it to a point that it's in your face. You really it affects your mood. It affects how you show up.
So it's like overwhelming presence of all these stimuli, like emotional stimuli, sensitivity to noise, to light, to crowds.
Yeah.
Um, so it really strikes me that if you have physical symptoms like tapping a foot or extreme
Oh.
heat or cold,
You're the
or right, all sorts of right, you've got your coping mechanisms. Good to see, right? Your squishy toy or whatever. But how like do you think it would have been picked up earlier, or like
No.
how do you get to this stage and it's only kind of being picked up now? Is that does that sound normal to you, or do you think it could have been picked up earlier?
I went to school. I was reared in Tallaght,
Mm,
West Tallaght to be precise, and the school that I went to, the teachers were great. The school itself was great. It was a very well-funded school, but there were a huge amount of social issues that showed up every day in the classroom. And me daydreaming out the window, I was considered a good student. Well, I was a good student. I got average grades.
yeah.
Was for me, I put in a lot of work at home. I did the studying. I did the, I was quite disciplined in that sense. I knew I had to do something. I was accountable to school and to I liked that accountability piece.
Mm,
And so I always made the effort. But I never felt like I got the reward or the result that reflected that effort.
mm,
Whereas when I was in work,
mm,
I did
mm,
because I was using different parts of my brain that were my creativity, my problem solving, um all of the other sides that I was a lot stronger in.
mm.
So, so no, I don't think it would necessarily have been picked up. To be honest, it didn't really show up until I was in my teenage years. That's when things got hard, and teenage years for anybody are difficult, as we all know. But for me, it was really, really, really struggle. I really struggled. I started to develop anxiety, bouts of depression. So, and I kind of had that throughout my entire career,
Mm,
um, and had it looked at different stages. And yeah, whatever I did at the time or whatever was suggested helped a little bit. But I always felt that there was something else
mm.
that just wasn't really making sense. And so when I eventually, it was suggested to me, this time last year actually, it was suggested to me, "Have you ever, thought about ADHD?" I was like, "No." Because I had that kind of stereotypical view of somebody running around the classroom and being, kind of.
That's what I would have thought of
Yeah, yeah.
before, because I just don't know really anything
Yeah, and
about
so
this.
and neither did I, to be honest. But when I started to do my own research and be curious about, well, actually, just an awful lot of it made sense, like really, really made sense. And I went for it. I went for assessment, and then I went for another assessment because I just couldn't believe how did I get to 43 years of age and this not be what it was, you know?
Wow.
So
So
yeah,
that's a
so
long time without it being flagged by anyone, right? Um,
it is a long time, but again, I don't necessarily look back and with any real regret
mm,
or with any kind of bad feeling because I see the positives
mm,
of what the ADHD has actually done for me. I see how, it propelled me an awful lot to better myself, to explore, to be curious. I seen all of those traits that if I didn't have ADHD, I probably wouldn't have gone on to do
mm.
half the stuff that I'm very happy I did.
Or being able to push projects forward so much, or be able to juggle
Yeah,
multiple different priorities at the same time.
yeah, yeah. And how that showed up, while it doesn't show up on my CV,
Mm,
that showed up me coming home and absolutely crashing or
mm,
having to take a nap during the day because my energy levels were just absolutely depleted from overwhelm, overstimulation, or whatever it was. I could sleep. My kids think I'm a bear. I hibernate, I
yeah.
can do a huge amount of sleep, and if I don't sleep, it shows up, and then I could have a power nap.
So I guess your brain is exhausted if it's overstimulated
But
so much of the
that
time.
that's exactly it. Yeah. So you have to decompress. You have to take the time. You have to understand how you operate,
Mm.
and you have to put in the support systems to help yourself. It's the only way, really.
So, so has this had an impact on the people around you? Like once you understand more, then you can communicate with them, so they know
Yeah,
where
it
you're at.
it it's been a real eye opener, I
Mm,
think, the last 12 months. Um, and it's funny because when you get to a point that you understand you are the way you are in a certain way because of your neurodiversity, you start seeing it in other people.
mm, right.
And it's funny how you tend to gravitate as well towards people that are very like you,
Right,
and
right, right.
you don't really know why, but now you kind of do.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Right. So on the same level, on the same wavelength, maybe in a way, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
can I ask, like, so I want to ask you about that because I feel it's almost ADHD might, for me, and maybe I'm wrong, still a little bit taboo, right? So, like, if you, well, in the sense that, like, let's say if you speak to somebody and you think, oh, I recognize some of my symptoms of ADHD in them, do you feel like you can just say, hey, have you ever considered that maybe you have ADHD? Because that feels to me like a faux pas.
Yeah, and that's really kind of interesting because I've kind of had to go through this process of accepting kind of
Hmm.
myself again a little bit, this new identity, although it's not really a new identity, it's more of a new identity to me
Mm,
because I don't really change who I or how I have been to others around
mm,
me. It's more of an internal thing,
mm,
Um, but to answer your question, like the only social media I was on prior to my coaching business was LinkedIn.
mm.
Never been on any other social media platform because it's just mad. But I've got into Instagram because I have to promote myself. There's obviously a lot of benefits to being on social media, and so the whole taboo around ADHD is interesting because I was a little bit, um, I wasn't aware of it, to be honest. And so yeah, look, I suppose the view I have is a very personal one. I'm still the same person.
Mhm.
I am who I am. I understand me better,
Yeah.
and I can understand why I probably connect more with other people. And I understand that by me not masking or trying to hide that part of myself, it has allowed other people to kind of say, yeah, actually, I relate to you a little bit more or whatever. So it's a little bit more of an organic
Mm.
thing that comes up
Like
between people.
like when somebody you mentioned like last January, somebody mentioned this to you. Oh, have you ever like were you taken aback by that or were you kind of
Well, I was in a therapy session,
okay,
so it was my New Year's resolution last year was enough of this professional development stuff. I need to actually do a bit of personal development
good
here,
on you.
you know.
Good on you. Fair play.
Yeah. And I remember the first session and I did something online with somebody and lovely lady, and she was like, "Why are you here?" And I was like, "I don't really know, but
Jeez, here we are.
here we
So
are."
what are we talking about, right?
So yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was true, I suppose, some conversations that we had that she identified my thought process or how I did things. And it was, through her own
Mm,
experience of working with people with neurodiversity that she was able to suggest it in a very safe way. And it was what it was, and it
Mm,
is what it is, and I just kind of accepted it.
mm,
Well, accepted it to a degree.
mm,
You do kind of go through a bit of a process of who have I been for the
mm.
last
Yeah, yeah, right. Right. It's a
40 odd
I
years.
think
Yeah.
you said it well when you were saying it's a new self identity, or let's say it's a update to the self identity, right? You're kind of saying, okay, and now this is part of me
Yeah.
as well. I remember I had I won't disclose any personal details, but I had a client a few years back, and just by talking to them and looking at their CV, I just noticed, well, this is a different type of person that I've spoken to before, and I think a lot of people would have noticed that. And I tried to find the right moment to just ask the question, but I was nervous and kind of because I was concerned that I might upset the person or offend the person or something like that. But then eventually I just said, have you ever thought about um, that maybe there might be something else going on here. And then they went away and they got checked, and then the medical professional was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Uh, you've got X, Y, and Z." And they came back and they were just like, "Oh my god, so much of my life makes so much more sense now. I never." Now, obviously, I didn't diagnose them. I was just like, I don't know if it's
Yeah, well,
worth.
kudos to you for recognizing that there was potentially something else there that was worth mentioning to this person.
It's just like if you're trying to see, do these dots join up? And then
Mm.
like part of the responsibility then is to say, well, do they join up? And you're trying to say that in the most supportive way possible. And that's kind of a bit of a risk you take. But then I suppose in the on the other side, you think personal. So in that case, I feel I have a responsibility, right? But on the personal side, I'm still worried if I have like a friend or a family member or someone else I'm in contact with, and you feel like this could really help them, like it's helped Suzanne, but also it could be really upsetting to them if it turns
Yeah.
out they're overwhelmed with something and it's just a normal part of the day.
Yeah.
So I suppose as a you're an ADHD coach now, right? What sort of coaching or question or advice would you have on this point?
Well, so I suppose I've kind of marketed myself more in a niche market. Okay. But, we both know when you're a coach, you can coach anybody and anything. The principle of coaching is the same in the sense that, your coachee is the expert and your role is to help them achieve what it is that they're there for, which is some sort of a change that they're looking to make. I suppose my value in coaching really is that lived experience. Um, and while I'm very aware that there are a lot of people that are not aware
Mhm,
that they have ADHD, or they may be just exploring the idea that there's potentially something else going on. And so I think there's a space in coaching where people can come and they're not look. I'm not. First of all, I'm not in the space to be giving a diagnosis to anybody. That's not what I'm looking to do. What I'm looking to do is provide a space to help people that feel that neurodiversity is part of their world, um, and they can speak freely
mm,
without being judged, about being feeling the need to have a mask on or be someone that they're not. And so, in terms of what I can offer, is that safe space from
mm,
my own lived experience to coach them in whatever it is that they want. But I also feel that I've obviously been able to adapt
mm,
and scaffold myself in some way. And that's come from, doing all of these different courses or developments that I've done throughout my career and in my personal life. But I do feel that there are specific things that I can actually provide. It kind of borders into a mentor area with regards to maybe some tools,
mhm,
maybe some methods that have worked well. I think there could be a lot of people in my age bracket that are doing really well. They
Mm,
don't need anybody like me. And that's really, and that's great. I would love to be able to help younger people, and
mm,
I'm talking the young adults.
yeah.
Um, Maybe they're in college, maybe they haven't started their career yet, and I could potentially help those guys fast track some of their learnings.
I'm sure it would be tons of help for people in college who are just coming about this diagnosis, to understand and get the tools. Can I ask, what do you think is the biggest challenge? Is it coming to terms with the update of the identity? Is it getting tools to cope in the modern workforce and deal with social media and all these other sort of distractions, or is there something else that's a bigger challenge for people?
I think the main challenge at the moment is getting access to services. I think, there's obviously there's a real issue there in terms of getting a diagnosis. Some people are um, accepting a self-diagnosis themselves. They yeah, I definitely have something, and
Mm,
while they're waiting maybe on the formal diagnosis, if that's what they feel they need to do, um, there is a coaching service that can help them
mm,
if they want to make a change or they want to improve an area of their life. There is a really good resource to people in ADHD Ireland,
mm.
which is the go-to body. They are funded, I think, by the government. They're an absolute wonderful service, and it's free. And I went straight to them as soon as I found out myself. And they have a fabulous 6-week program to help people come to terms with
Oh,
ADHD.
wonderful.
It's in a group environment, which is great, and that suits an awful lot of people. Um, but if you're not looking, or you're not ready to be in a group environment and you just want that one-to-one
Mm,
time and space with somebody, that's the space that I'm offering,
right.
is to help with that.
Very good. Very good. Um, so would you see yourself mostly working with younger people, or do you think seasoned professionals could benefit from your service as well?
Yeah, I think season, like, we all have blind spots. We all have blind spots.
Oh yeah, I've loads.
One of the things that, yeah, and again, it's that if an individual is motivated and wants to develop themselves, yeah, I can help them too. Um, the thing with ADHD is it hits every element
Mm,
of life, male, female, all age groups. Um, so it's quite broad.
mm,
So I think really, if you are passionate, and if you are motivated to change something in your life, you have a neurodiversity or speculate you have a
mm,
neurodiversity and you need some support,
mm.
that's the space that I'm looking to provide a service in.
Fantastic. So they should reach out to you on Instagram or on LinkedIn, or where's the best place to reach you?
Yeah, I'd say LinkedIn at the moment, or Instagram. My website, I have my landing page up. It's suzannebrown.ie. Um, and all my details for contacting me are on there as well too. And I do offer a 20-minute chemistry session for anybody, so there's no obligation to go any further, but it's just, I suppose, an exploratory conversation to see if I can help. Um, and yeah, I offer that as free, to kind of, for people to see if it's something that may or may not be of interest.
That's super. That's super. So anyone who's thinking of it, or maybe they're not even sure if they have it, or maybe they'll self-diagnose or they're pre-diagnosis, just reach out to you, have a chat, and then see where to go from there. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm happy to support you in any way that I can.
So thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights and your learnings and your wisdom from business to the ADHD side. And it's lovely to see you go from coachee, working with a couple of different coaches, to full circle to becoming a coach yourself. And I'm sure you're still coaching yourself through the process yourself. So good on you. It's wonderful to see, and I'm excited to follow you on Instagram and to see where you go from here. So looking forward to learning more about you and ADHD as you go. Thanks so much for the chat. Really appreciate it.